In this module, we're going to discuss shamanism. As I mentioned in Module 4, Part 1, the shaman is the most ancient form of healer that we find in the world. And what is peculiar about the shaman, now this is strictly from an emic, or insider's point of view, is that they claim to be able to actually enter the spirit world and have some sort of audience with the gods and the spirits, and then of course bring back whatever knowledge they have or whatever abilities they've acquired. And in one way or another, they're able to directly contact and affiliate themselves with the gods and spirits. And that's what makes them unique in the world of priests and medicine men and sorcerers, etc. Only shamans have this ability. This institution of the shaman is ubiquitous. In other words, we find it in all of the major culture areas of the world. And it goes back millennia. So it appears as though this practice is sort of accommodating some very deep, perhaps psychological needs, cross-culturally. Now, as you might guess, for someone who at least claims to have these very special abilities, it requires a very special individual to fill the position. And the initiation process can be often quite drawn out, quite dramatic, sometimes quite brutal. And the point is to take a sort of rank and file individual, a structural individual, in other words, someone who is firmly ensconced in the acceptable, appropriate ways of the culture, and take them out of that mode and make them special, separate, different from everyone else. In other words, make them anti-structural to some extent. Bring them to a point, transform them in such a way that they're no longer just an average, ordinary Joe, that in fact they are now special, as I said, and anti-structural. And if you think about it, this sort of makes sense, because after all, these people are going to be leaving this world to enter the spiritual dimension. And we can't expect that to be accomplished by someone who is, quote-unquote, just an ordinary Joe, someone who is structural. In fact, we need someone who is special, different, or anti-structural. One of the interesting aspects of the shamanic initiation involves sexual abstinence. In fact, as you'll read in one of your papers that you've been assigned to read, The Sound of Rushing Water, the longer a shaman abstains from sex during his initiation, then the more potent his abilities will be. And again, that just should make sense to you, since abstaining from sex, of course, is an acultural or anti-structural activity, which again sort of acts to transform one from a state of ordinary culture to a sort of transcendent state, one in which he will be able to actually have an audience with gods and spirits. Now, shamans conduct their business, quote-unquote, while in a trance. And this trance state, well, first of all, they have to prepare for the trance state by fasting, social isolation, sexual abstinence, etc. Again, the point being that they have to be removed from their everyday cultural or structural mode of existence and prepared for this very special journey. They have to become something special before they can make this special journey, so to speak. The actual trance state, during which time they will convene with the spirits and the gods, this actual trance state is accomplished by either drumming, singing, dancing, clapping, and on some occasions hallucinogenic substances. In fact, there's a pretty neat breakdown. It applies most of the time. Old world shamans in Africa and Asia tend to use non-pharmacological means to induce trance, and that'd be dancing and clapping and singing, sometimes meditation, etc. Whereas in the New World, I'm especially talking about Central and South America here, in the New World they use psychoactive or hallucinogenic substances to induce trance. The universe, according to shamanistic cultures, generally tends to be structured in the form of multiple parallel layers, one above the other. Often the realm of the spirits or gods, or at least where we might go after we die, is viewed as being above us. The earth is usually at some intermediate level, and there are lower levels, not necessarily analogous to the Christian hell. The lower levels may be similar to the earth, and there may be just different sorts of beings that live there. But that is characteristic of the shamanistic cosmology, just sort of multiple parallel layers, and there's thought to be a conduit between the layers. And in fact, in some cases, the shaman himself is thought to be the conduit, the channel, so to speak, through which movement can occur between the levels. Consider Buddhism. If you know anything about Buddhism, it is said that the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and became enlightened. Through some sort of gap in the unity of things came this realization that the Buddha experienced, and he experienced this while sitting under the Bodhi tree. So it's almost as if the Bodhi tree in that case served as a conduit between levels of consciousness or levels of reality. Finally, in regard to examples of shamanism, you're going to read a paper about the Hivro people of Ecuador, who actually consume a drink called natima, and they have spirit helpers that help them with their magic, called pasuk, sintsak, or little sort of invisible kinds of darts, so to speak, that they use to bring about sickness. Anyway, so you'll read all about the Hivro shaman in that paper. Another example of shamanism occurs among the Yanomamo. The Yanomamo actually snort up this substance made from the ebene tree, and under the influence of this substance, they claim that they can contact the Hikura, these little tiny sort of humanoid beings that have to be talked to and entreated and subdued and pleased in some way if healing is going to occur. But there are actually, that's just a couple of examples. There are many, many, many examples of shamanism around the world. As I said, it's a ubiquitous cultural institution that's been around for millennia.